You don't need me to record on my end, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, welcome. Live.
Hatem, do you use a microphone?
I am. Why?
You should put it closer to your mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a different setting today. So, welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem with the microphone close to my mouth.
Why do you need a windscreen in front of your windscreen?
It's one windscreen.
Yeah, you have a windscreen, but then the mic has its own built in with. Yeah. You see the balm on top of the microphone? You don't need both.
See what I have to deal with.
He's very windy.
Yeah, see what I have to deal with. Yeah, I'm in the middle of a very windy place,
and it doesn't actually protect against long-windedness. In case you were thought maybe it was gonna. But go ahead.
Noam studied mics and well, I don't know. It looks like that in a picture, so I did it like that. So
really,
anyway, yeah.
Why don't you? How much you spend for that? Like 1995?
I think it clears something. How much did I spend on that? Did you say 995?
Yes. It looks like some they make a fancy picture or something. Anyway, I'll talk to you about it later. Go ahead.
All right, that was Noam Dworman from the Comedy Cellar, the one and only, my best friend, and he always managed to see the good in me.
Because it doesn't sound good. I don't know what's going on.
No, I know. Yeah, something. I think it's a different sitting. Like usually, I have it like longer and louder.
It's distorted.
There's something about it, but here we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Andrew Heaton is here, comedian and
Hello.
good friend. And he's regular, and he's joining us from Scotland.
That's right. I'm over at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's fantastic. This is, I think, the very last night. So I will probably go do either comedy or karaoke or drinking or some combination of all three later this evening after I talk to you.
Oh, excellent. Well, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you as well.
No, we had a big event at the Cellar the other day, yesterday, actually, or the day before. It depends on this podcast. It was fun. You want to talk about it?
Well,
big one.
Well, not really, except that's what's in the papers. Dave Chappelle had his 50th birthday party at the Comedy Cellar, but I'm under legal jeopardy to discuss the event.
You can't talk about birthday?
I can't talk about, the details of the party. I mean, not that there's anything.
Did somebody die?
No, nothing died. And not only
did you
died,
murder someone? No.
But nothing controversial happened. It was actually a very, very warm, pleasant event. Very sentimental. It was very nice.
Oh, nice.
A lot of times in events like this, the paperwork are done before the event even in case, but usually the event goes very smooth, and like Noam said, a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff. It's just Friends is not Hollywood. I mean, it looks like it, but it's, there's a lot of warm feeling, like I said. And sadly, I usually don't like to talk about my birthdays either, but for different reasons. But anyway, but it was fun, and also he had a lot of comedians, big names in the Cellar this week as well, as usual.
Would you stop trying to plug the Cellar? Come on, go on.
I'm not trying to plug anything.
What is this? The Cellar's the club y'all work at? Is that's what I've heard of this?
Yeah.
All right, let's get going. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Giuliani, Trump, Russia, India, a lot of things. So the first thing is like the Wagner leader, died, and Putin is very sad about it, and he's obviously said that he's he was a very good man, very good businessman. And he said, this is what it's called, Putin's. First of all, I want to express my sincere condolences to the families of the victim. This is always a tragedy. And then he said how, that he was a good man, made some mistakes, but he was a good man. So what's your thoughts? And do you think that this was assassination or assassination?
I think it is such a crazy coincidence that he led a coup against the Kremlin, and then made friends with the Kremlin, and then died in a totally unrelated accidental plane crash a month later. What an incredible! Can you imagine how improbable that is? That he to almost be killed by Putin, only to make up with him and then die in a plane crash. I mean, what a crazy day.
So you think it was the second one, assassination, not the first one?
I think somebody whacked him. I think the Kremlin is somewhat opaque, and I don't know all of the power players here, so it's possible he was whacked by somebody within Wagner Group. It's possible that some Ukrainians killed him, but my money's probably Putin killed him, or that one of Putin's lieutenants like got a wink, wink, nod from Putin and did it. Yeah, I think he was absolutely assassinated. The question is just who did it. Probably Putin.
Norm?
I agree. You have to live every day like it's your last. You never know what unforeseen, totally out of the blue consequence could come from trying to assassinate a ruthless dictator. What were the odds?
The telling bit that he was an assassination is the fact that Putin isn't blaming, so far as I know, he's not blaming this on anybody. Like if Putin came out and went, this is X group that absolutely murdered him, I would be like, oh, maybe. But the fact that I think that the current party line is that it was just an accident, I'm like, oh no, that means they killed him. They absolutely killed him.
And the fact that it was
apparently Putin is swearing a la OJ to find the real killer, and Putin wrote a book says if I had wanted to assassinate him, this is how I would have done it.
Well, again, like you think, like he could be the most unlucky person in the world, and it's really an accident or somebody else killed him. But I mean, like if you have a enemy, that's the perfect time to kill him, because everybody's gonna blame Putin, and he's gonna take credit for it anyway. So it's a win-win.
It's true. There's some angry lover that wants to kill him for getting jilted, or I don't know, he owed money to a bookie or something. Now's the time to kill him. That's absolutely true.
It's very true, but it's how do you think anything is going to change in Russia at all? Anybody going to be able to stand up to Putin again? I don't think so, right?
I don't. I have a fairly dismal prognostication of what's going to happen in both Russia and Ukraine over the next couple of years, which is I think it's just going to be more of the same. I don't like that. I'm not rooting for that, but I don't think you're going to see anything massive happen in Russia. I do think that when Putin eventually dies, it's going to be absolutely batshit crazy, because I do not think that there's any type of system in place for anything approaching a transition of power as we would know it. I think it's going to be a bloodbath where a bunch of oligarchs immediately start murdering each other and somebody tries to grab the reins. So when Putin dies, I think that there's going to be crazy stuff ahead and very scary stuff ahead, because whoever succeeds Putin's going to own all those nukes. I mean, just to have complete control over the nukes. So that will be a thing. But in the meantime, no, I think that you're going to see this ongoing proxy war between the United States and NATO and Russia on Ukrainian soil. And it's going to keep being this just bloody line going back and forth. And I don't see there being a decisive victory in either camp anytime soon.
That assassination was from, it's assassination, obviously it is, I think, was from the playbook of Saddam Hussein. Do you guys remember when he killed his brother-in-law? Also in a plane, but it was helicopter crash.
I don't recall that. What happened?
Yeah, he was mad that this guy was fucking his sister.
Because his brother-in-law.
Yeah.
He gets it.
Actually, you know what? Saddam Hussein could think of something like that. But yeah, a lot of why would you if you why would you take a plane? Why don't you just travel? I would never do a move. I would just stay home. If I'm pissing off somebody like Putin, this shows you how hardcore that guy was.
I'm thinking Putin probably knows where your house is. Like you're swapping Christmas cards every year. He knows your address. You don't want to be hanging out there all hours. They'll, someone accidentally drops a Scud missile on it, or a plane accidentally crashes on it. I think trick is get to Switzerland. That's what you do. Get the fuck out of Ukraine or Russia. Get a bunch of gold in a briefcase. Go to Switzerland. Lay low. That's what you do.
Oh, to the United States, right here.
Yeah.
All right, next one. I call this one From Rico to Rico. You guys like how smart I am? From Rico to Rico. That was just brilliant. Needs a moment's silence. Rudy Giuliani. It's so sad, especially from being from New York and remember 9/11 and remember his leadership, and remember all that, and it just keep going worse and worse and worse for him. But he said that he's being prosecuted for just being a lawyer and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that? Let's go with Noam first.
Oh my God, I'm so bored of the news. Really? What's the question? Is he being persecuted for being a lawyer?
That's what he's claiming.
Well, he's not being persecuted for being a lawyer. It's possible he's being persecuted for being associated with Trump. I mean, they were up to no good. Giuliani certainly was up to no good. Was it criminal? I will. I think I've read some strong arguments that it's probably not criminal, but we haven't seen all the evidence. But I mean, people from the left to the right, attorneys have expressed skepticism that this Rico statute is really appropriate for something like this, particularly because it's been interpreted to be a requirement of Rico statute has been interpreted that it needs to be an enterprise that has a continuing risk to the public, like the mafia or something, which doesn't just come together for, to contest a particular thing in Georgia, even in bad faith, and then disband and go on to other things. It's not a continuing enterprise. They're not still at it today, or there's no risk of them still at it today. This is the argument, and it seems pretty persuasive to me. So, I mean, they hate Trump, and they have reason to, but I'm skeptical of the legal arguments. I think they're on much firmer ground with the obstruction of justice related to the documents. Whatever.
Andrew.
I think there are 3 cases out right now. There's
Four.
one in New York.
Four.
So there's one in New York, which I think is bullshit. I think the New York indictment was ridiculous, and I think is largely a guy that wants to get applause for the rest of his life for being the dude that indicted Trump. I think that one was silly. The one that is happening in federal court that has 4 different counts. One is civil rights violation, one is conspiracy, one is obstruction. I can't remember the other one. I think that's the strongest of everything that they've tossed to Trump. And fraud, I think that's the other one. Fraud, I think could stick. One of the things that happened in the course of the 2020 plot was that these dueling electors were sent to Congress. The idea being the Eastman memo that Pence was going to refuse to seat dueling electors, that we'd cut them out and we'd kick it to the House. It was a whole thing. One of the things that happened in that, and I think every state but Ohio, was these dueling electors would say legally, like they'd fill out a form to the effect of, I am a duly elected and certified elector of the state. And the significance of saying that you're certified means that the Secretary of State has said you are the elector, which was a lie. It was an act of fraud. So I think that indictment has very clear-cut legal dimensions of saying fraud was perpetrated deliberately, consciously, and under unambiguous legal terms in an effort to change the course of the direction. When we get into the Georgia case with the Rico law, I don't know a lot about Rico law, but it strikes me as being a lot more ambiguous. As Noam points out, Rico laws are predominantly used to nab organizations, because what used to happen was when the mafia would get caught and you try to go after the kingfish, he ends up just delegating stuff out to his subordinates, and you can't get them because they're in shell corporations and they shuffle all the resources around. And so it becomes this whack-a-mole game. So they developed Rico laws to try to get the actual groups themselves. I don't know Rico law, but it strikes me as very different of looking at a campaign that is trying to subvert the democratic transition of power, as I believe they were doing, and at the same time putting them in the same category as a mafia group or a drug cartel. That does strike me as misapplication of law within that. So a Rico expert might correct me on this, but that one strikes me as more ambiguous than the federal case that's coming against it.
Let me add, and I don't know if anybody said this, Savalos will probably agree with me, that there's another issue here which hasn't really been discussed, but it's going to become an issue, I believe, if and when this gets to like a Supreme Court review, which is that as opposed to like the mafia, which is dealing with gambling and money laundering and whatever drugs, this is criminalizing in some way the contestation of elections, and elections have a very fundamental place in our system in the same way that New York Times versus Sullivan was developed as a doctrine to put a buffer around the idea of penalizing free speech, because you had to show actual malice or reckless disregard for the truth, because what you didn't want to do is to allow a claim against free speech to have a suppressing effect, a chilling effect on the exercise of free speech. And I think that there's going to be the same issue here. You don't want to create a situation where people start worrying that if they challenge what they believe to be a fraudulent election, that now if it doesn't pan out, or if somebody decides, you should have known better, that they will now be arrested. So I believe that the courts will want to keep some wide berth around the standard of when you can criminalize somebody contesting an election through legal channels. And that's why I think really this is it's an uphill battle here. Even if they get a conviction, I think eventually the Supreme Court will, unless, we don't know all the evidence, unless somebody comes out and says, yeah, I have a recording here. Trump said, I knew this was bullshit. And there are scenarios where it could be clear, but in general, yeah, go ahead.
Well, for conspiracy, I think you do need to have confirmation of willful desire to commit fraud, something like that. You need that for conspiracy. I think your point is well met, that you don't want to penalize people for a legal theory. So if somebody has a legal theory they're trying out, that is a form of free speech, and I don't disagree with all of that. However, I will remind everybody that fraud was perpetrated. It wasn't just a thing where we think that the election was ill-gotten and we are contesting that and we want to recount or some other mechanism to try to redress these grievances. The Trump campaign was actively trying to subvert the law in order to do what they claim was restore the law, but they were still subverting the law in the process. So in the example of electoral delegates being sent and claiming to be certified electors, they were committing fraud because they weren't certified. There's an actual legal thing that they have to do in order to accomplish that. So I think that this is a situation where
that sounds like a crime. I don't know if Trump is accused of that, but that sounds like a crime.
I think it's a crime, and I don't know how you work all the red lines on that and get it all together. But with it, I think that the overall Trump campaign, in terms of my interpretation at this time, is that if we give them the benefit of the doubt, they thought they were robbed and they committed a crime in order to try to get restitution, but they're still committing a crime in the process. How that breaks down in terms of individual culpability, I don't know. That's why I think that the fraud element that comes out of the DC case is the strongest one. The civil rights one I think is a little bit weak. But the other thing too is that it's not that every single one of these has to add up in order for him to get convicted. There's a whole lot of spaghetti that's been thrown against the wall. Again, I think the New York one's kind of ridiculous. I think that there's at least one element of the DC case that is legitimate. And then the Georgia one, I don't really know because I don't know Rico law. But I think you could very much see a situation where this leads to prosecution. Although, what the hell happens when it gets up to the Supreme Court? I don't know. Because if it goes through the DC case, which I think is the strongest one, then it'll go to the Supreme Court. Conversely, if it goes through Georgia, the president, whoever it is, can't pardon anybody under a state law. So if a Republican gets it or if Trump gets it and he's convicted in Georgia, he still goes to jail in Georgia. There's nothing that could legally be done there, even if the Republican governor of Georgia decides.
If you're in Georgia?
So there's state courts and federal courts. They are separate. They have separate sovereignty. The president has no authority over a state court whatsoever unless that state gives him the authority. But the whole American system is that the federal government is a compact of the states, which are themselves sovereign entities. So Georgia is a sovereign judicial system unto itself. The president has no pardoning abilities there. And in fact, Georgia specifically, you can't pardon anybody as governor unless they've already served 5 years of their prison sentence. So even if Trump were convicted, even if a very pro-Trump governor were in Georgia, they could not pardon him unless the legislature changed the law to allow the governor to do that. So if it does go through it in Georgia, it won't really matter what the Supreme Court thinks. And so there's some real stuff that could happen in the future.
That's not true.
It opens up this.
No. The Supreme Court can overrule the conviction.
I don't think they could. Unless they're claiming to subvert state prerogative, which I don't think they would do.
No, the Supreme Court, the Constitution is brought to bear on state law as well.
Right. If you could prove that the state of Georgia's prosecution was contravened to constitutional law, then the Supreme Court would have a reason to get involved. But if it wasn't contravened to constitutional law and it was just this is our own criminal prosecution, the Supreme Court would have no jurisdiction there.
Yeah, it's a tricky issue, but I believe they'll find a way to get it. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm also assuming that the jurists in the Supreme Court will dutifully pay attention to the Constitution as written at every step of the process, and that no one will ever have a political motivation.
Because I don't think the Supreme Court will be overstepping, because it is within the Supreme Court's good faith worry that contests to the presidential elections are not fucked around with by the states. By you can't have rogue state prosecutors locking up presidential candidates because they decided they don't like the way the president. I mean, what if somebody wanted to sue arrest Stacey Abrams for whatever, for her,
or if a city did it, like if any city in America could arrest an unpopular candidate, that would open up a very big can of worms. Yeah, you make a good point.
This whole issue of elections is a real crossroads between federal and state, because the states control the presidential elections, but they're federal elections. So it's a weird.
Yeah,
I don't know that much about the law, but I wouldn't think that Supreme Court was not being proper by feeling that it's the only body in the land that can decide what the rules are here. But I don't even after having gone to law school, I have to say I don't really know enough about the law. So
wait, hold on. No, you went to law school? I didn't know this. You're an attorney? Oh, I should fucking shut my gums then.
No. Please don't. I went so many years ago. I crammed for every exam.
This is one of the things that one of the benefits, if anybody want to move to the Middle East, you will never have a show about election. We don't waste time on this bullshit. We know the results before the vote. So, but
very efficient.
Yeah, there's two things. One thing that Noam said, like he says repeatedly, is about that. If somebody like Trump, like the way, and all the guys around, like the way they under pressure, like here and there, and they're carrying it themselves in a certain way. Like I could never do that. Like if there's one problem, it's just like that shows you something about their character. And the other thing is, like, if Trump, like, let's say Trump won, for him to be able to get anybody in the cabinet. Remember when he was president, it took him a long time to form that first cabinet. Now it's going to be even harder because nobody wants to be, because they come in after anybody and everybody that comes near him. So that's going to be a major problem in the democracy process, I think, because if he won, who's going to, how do I know? Or he's going to have to pardon everybody before he leaves. I don't know if he can do that, but that would be a big issue, don't you think?
I don't think now. I think that was a big problem early on in the Trump administration, where he was so radioactive that they were at the beginning having a difficult time just filling positions.
Now it's even more radioactive. Now the court's coming after them.
Right, but I don't think that, like, if you're going to become Secretary of Agriculture, that there's any concern you're going to be prosecuted just for being in the Trump administration. So I think that, like maybe at the campaign level, like I've known some people that have worked in campaigns that, like, at least the guy I talked to, like, was aware that he might go to jail if they lost. That was in his mind what might happen. But in terms of the actual just like filling cabinet positions, things like that, I don't think that'll be a problem. No one's going to prosecute the Secretary of Energy just for being a Trump appointee or anything like that. Although that being said,
I want to say the following: we're living in a pretty sad time in American history, with Trump, and I mean, Trump is a sad thing. The fact that they're trying to put him in jail, in my opinion, is a sad thing. The fact that some of the attempts to put him in jail are in such bad faith, like the New York charge, is a sad thing. The fact that Joe Biden is president, and everything that's going on with him and the lies that he's telling, and Hunter and blah blah. This is all a sad thing. the fact that the country is so polarized is a sad thing. The fact that the media is so disingenuous on both sides is a very sad thing. This is it's just a bad time all around. And it's easy to lose perspective in bad times. And I would still say that, having said that, I'm very optimistic about this country. This will pass. And if they don't fuck with the system, and what made me have this thought was looking at China, and China's economy is grinding to a halt now. Their standard of living there is still 20% of Americans. They're down to like 3% economic growth from these, and because the system is everything. It's not about the individuals who run it. America is successful because of its freedom, the free market, the fact that you have 300 million people pursuing their own interests in a way that's innovative and creates wealth for each other, and that we have protections to complain about everything that's going on now in our First Amendment, even though it's a little bit out of style. And yet again, this flash in the pan China, it could turn around, but I don't think it will turn around so easily. I think we just need to learn the lesson that these other systems don't work. Just because a dictatorship has some success for some short period of time, we should not begin to lose faith in our incredible system that has been the leader of the world now for basically since we started. Since day one, America has taken the lead in the world and has never relinquished it. And, so in some way, I'm like, well, I guess what I'm saying is like, this is all a distraction. We just have to, it'll pass. I wish they wouldn't try to put Trump in jail. I'm hoping, and I give it a 50% chance that neither of these guys will be the nominees by November, but we'll see.
Well, Biden, but you don't think we should do the Russian experiment? Like Biden shouldn't go on when Trump take a plane and say he was a difficult man, but he was a good man.
I'm not even going to joke about that, given the potential consequences. I will joke about this. No, don't you think it'd be better if we had 2 or 3 bureaucrats just in charge of everybody's money? Wouldn't that be a better way to run our country? If everybody put the money in a hat and gave it to Elizabeth Warren, and she, being smarter than all Americans, just doled it out? Isn't that what we're all working towards?
Well, China runs this country like Shark Tank, and it's ridiculous.
But no, don't you think that to do that? I agree with you. I'm not worried about the future, but the near future. Don't you need a leader for that to happen? Don't you need somebody to come out as like, can we stop with this bullshit? Can we like
this is I think the big lie. I think that the what do we need the president for? We certainly need him in a case of an emergency. Trump, the biggest flaw of Trump, but I'm not even, as I'm saying, I'm not even sure about this anymore, but it seemed to me at the time that the biggest flaw of Trump is that when we really needed a good leader during COVID, he was a C- at best. But having said that, with everything that's come out since then, I wonder even if that really mattered. I wonder if our COVID performance could have in the end been that different. And maybe it could have been worse if a president had been more aggressive with lockdowns. And I don't credit Trump. I don't credit Trump with any kind of intelligent insight. But the fact is, when you look at some of the articles that have been written in places like Bloomberg, not right-wing places, these lockdowns are not looking so good. And, and the Biden administration, they did not handle Afghanistan well, but they have not made a mess of Ukraine. You can disagree with the policy. You can think we should let Ukraine, we should just let the Ukrainians, twist in the wind. I don't agree with that, but some people think that. But I'm just saying, in terms of the competence with which they're able to implement the policy that they believe is the correct policy, they're doing pretty well at it. And, God forbid there's a real attack on the homeland or anything like that, then you actually need a president to rise to the occasion. But otherwise, what the fuck does the president do? He should just stay home. Go ahead.
I'll put a pin in the Ukraine thing for now, but overall, I very much agree with Noam's sentiment. I think that there is this widespread, deeply authoritarian, deeply hierarchical mindset that the president is the leader of America. He's the leader of the American government. He's the leader of the American armed force. I don't get my fucking lunchtime based on what the president tells me. I don't pick my comedy based on what the president's up to. I might, but I'm making the decision. Like it's society is this big amorphous Jackson Pollock painting. It's like a bunch of Venn diagrams, and the government's one of those things, and it's important, but it's just one circle. There's also people, corporations, local government, state government, all that things, nonprofits, and 330 million individuals.
But hold on, I disagree a little bit, because presidents, yeah, I know what you're saying, but also they can divide people. Look how because of the last few president or last two, the country is very divided.
I don't think it's because of the president.
Well, it didn't happen when Bush was president. Even with the middle with Bush Gore thing, it wasn't as divided as it was.
I think I mean, I'll let Andrew talk, but I think that the presidents are tapping into it. I don't think they're creating it.
I think it's a symptom, not a cause. I mean, I think a lot of people,
hold on, Bush versus Gore, the biggest controversial, people could be like, oh my God, this is stolen, this is this.
Let him give his answer.
But then go ahead,
let him explain.
Well, so noting that a lot of my friends kind of view society as a pyramid with a government on top, and I just fundamentally disagree with that. I view it as, again, the Jackson word Pollock. In terms of the president can actually absolutely stir shit up. That's absolutely true. The president can make things worse. The president can catalyze these phenomena. But the term effective polarization, that is to say, just we hate each other, that bit seems to be something that is in the water, and it's not just in the water in the United States, which tells me that there's something very big going on everywhere. So I'm in Scotland right now. Scotland has a different electoral system than us. They've got proportional representation. They've got it's basically ranked choice voting, but just one time. All the stuff that I'd recommend doing over here. It's really contentious politics over here. It's really contentious in terms of the prime minister, whether to remain in the United Kingdom, and Brexit. All of those things are super contentious. France has a 2-round presidential system where, if Bernie Sanders doesn't do that well in the next round, your vote goes to Macron or whatever. Macron versus Le Pen is not a genial, convivial election that they just had. And over in the Netherlands, which is the cutest goddamn social democracy, Northern European homogenous state you can think of, they're setting shit on fire. It's an incredibly acrimonious thing. So I look at it, and I think the period we're living in right now is probably comparable to when the printing press came out. And the wars of religion that were unleashed across Europe between the Protestants and the Catholics. Martin Luther didn't have new ideas. They've already been tried out. It's just that whoever came up with the ideas got burned at the stake, and the ideas weren't promulgated fast enough to do anything because the authorities controlled all the information. The printing press comes out, and now all this information can get out. The gatekeepers are brought to heel, and the wars of religion happen. I think we're seeing something very similar happening right now with social media, with instantaneous digital media, with no cost for me to participate in the conversation. I can do it anonymously, all those different things. There's also some electoral mechanisms in the United States that I think are causing these things to happen as well. But either way, I would say Trump, and he very much is a divisive figure that I do not think has in any way helped the effective polarization going on in the country. I think he's capitalizing on it, as Noam says, and he is catalyzing it rather than being some aberration to it.
So then he is then the president is a danger if he divides it. It's not, so he have an important role. He could be very divisive. Yeah, he doesn't do a lot of things, but he could be very divisive. And also,
I'm not saying the president has no impact. I'm contesting the basic premise that the president is the father of the nation and the chaplain of the people and a god. He's just the top bureaucrat. That's it. The society's bigger than government. Government is a subset of society. It's not a pyramid with the president at the top. I just wish to establish that philosophical construct.
The personality could count, and we've been suffering from it. Anyway, let's jump to the next one. Speaking also of leaders. So if you have a life and did not see the Republican debate, we'll give you a rundown now. But who do you think was, I don't know if you guys watch it, but did you think who was the winner and losers from the first Republican debate? If you watch it, and your thoughts on it, Noam?
No, let Andrew go.
Andrew first. Go ahead.
I think Trump won the first presidential debate.
Sure,
he didn't show up, and yet he won it.
Yeah.
He's still leading in the polls, and I think he made the right decision. I'm not a Trump fan, but every time he talks about the debates, he's like, "People know who I am. I don't think I need to be there." And I'm like, I can't disagree. Everybody has an opinion on the guy. I'd say after him, Vivek Goswami won the debate. In that Vivek got the most screen time. He's gone from complete obscurity as of 2 years ago on the national stage to being a very known commodity within the Republican circle. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was Trump's running mate. I think he's running to get a book deal, but in which case he's playing it brilliantly. But he might end
I
up
think
being
he's running
VP.
to go to be a VP.
Yeah, and he might well pull it off. In which case, he did a really good job. I thought cards on the table. I saw half the debate. I've not been able to watch all of it yet. I will complete it. The beginning bit that I saw, I think Pence is odd man out and is rapidly drifting. And I think Vivek won the debate insofar as he was able to capitalize on it.
Okay, so let's stay with the winners only. Who do you think won this, Noam, in your opinion?
I don't know. I think that, I mean, I heard a good amount of it in my car. And I was surprised. I thought to my ear, this is not your question really. To my ear, I thought Nikki Haley was good and better than I had ever heard her, expected her to be. And, I have a soft spot for Chris Christie, although he did what they all do, is kind of what DeSantis do. They fucking overplay their hand. Like I was pretty, keen on DeSantis when I thought he was a no bullshit administrator in Florida who kept his head down and did what was the right thing to do as he saw it. And then he starts getting some smoke. So then he starts, going after Disney and just going overboard on these pandering on these social issues. And I'm sympathetic on some of these issues, but just pandering overboard. I'm like, I don't need a guy like that. Same thing with, so Christie says, if Hunter Biden was, if I blah, 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 I'd have him in jail for 10 years. And I'm like, really? 10 years, you fucking Nazi? You want to put this poor guy who I know he's full of shit, he's a criminal, whatever, 10 years behind bars for what? For like it, and I say, you are, and I say, this is how you thought you could close the bridge and put it, all of a sudden you begin to see somehow with true stripes. So he did well, Christie, but that answer really disturbed me. Vivek is to me yet another one of these Republican flashes in the pan, like Herman Cain or Ben Carson, or every so years some dark horse. Forgive me saying dark horse in reference to black candidates, but some dark horse comes out and leads the Republicans for a while because they're hucksterish and they have a good sales pitch. But I don't think it's meaningful if a guy who has zero chance, in my opinion, of actually being the nominee wins the debate. But he won in terms of the fact that he seemed to show the biggest bump in the polls. Trump, I don't know. The whole thing is depressing. I guess Vivek won the debate, but
I think definitely Trump won. And I think something we said in this podcast before, and Noam said in this podcast before a lot. If just Trump stopped talking and say the election was not rigged and stop talking, just not talk at all, he will win. And I think not being able to debate, like if you just, I think they did him a big favor, cut him off of all social media, and if he continue doing this, he's gonna be
Trump?
something. Yeah.
Well, no, I think that ship has sailed. He's got 4 criminal charges proceeding against him. I don't think social media is his problem anymore.
No, talking in general is a problem. His opening his mouth. Okay, who's the biggest losers?
I mean, this is the thing, and you don't know how this wisdom will emerge or if it can emerge, but you would think it would emerge to the Republicans that actually, if they would just nominate one of these reasonable, somewhat moderate Republicans,
like who?
They would.
Like
anyone.
Bergen.
What's that?
What was the guy from North Dakota? Bergen or Berger?
I don't know. Oh, yeah, but even
he struck me as sane.
Nikki Haley, Christie, any of the point is that Biden is such an impotent candidate. Biden is so old. I don't want to call him senile. I don't like when they call him senile, but he's listless in the extreme, and the country doesn't really like him. And it seems like the only guy he could beat would be Trump. And yes, the Republicans have it in their heads that they want to nominate Trump.
What about DeSantis? Do you think you have any chance? Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, so the bit that's worth keeping in mind here is actuarial tables. I'm not rooting for anybody to die, but we have 2 rather old candidates, the front runners for the Republican and Democratic parties that are in extremely stressful positions. One of them's president, the other one has 4 indictments, as Noam points out, and they're going to be running campaigns on top of that. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that one of them will have a health problem that will compel them to drop out of the race at some point. I don't know, 20%
But they're
chance.
so
let's say.
arrogant they won't drop, even if they have, unless they have to. You know,
Well, then
somebody.
they might, just be literally physically incapable of it. Were that to happen, I think that all bets are off with the Republicans, and DeSantis would probably be looking pretty good right now.
I think there's a good chance that DeSantis or someone else can take over, because Trump's support is not. It looks like what he had in 2016, but to me, it's not that at all. In 2016, he had the support of a lot of people who really believed that this business genius, I'm putting it in quotes, and would drain the swamp and turn things around, and he had what it takes, and all this stuff. The people really believed this stuff, and they supported him for that reason. I don't know that that's the cement of his support now. I think the cement of his support now is more along the lines of resentment. They feel he was robbed. They feel he was victimized while he was president. They hate the Democrats, and because he's the guy everybody supports. It's like it's the popular club. But if one of these candidates should show a good showing in Iowa or New Hampshire, anywhere, I think you could see Trump's support immediately just fall like a house of cards. The way Howard Dean's support fell like a house of cards in whatever year, that 2004, whatever year that was. I think that if you were to poll it in detail, you would find that many of Trump's supporters are open to the idea of supporting somebody else. But right now there's a lot of social pressure and peer pressure, and it's just not the thing. It's too soon for that. But I do think it could all fall apart for Trump, because I don't think people have that much faith in him, or there's much optimism to say, oh, when Trump is president in 2021, then he's going to turn this country around. I don't think anybody thinks that, but they did think that in 2016. So I don't think, that's
I think Trump has a lock on this. I think he's an absolute lock on this. Once the indictments happened, that's going to suck all the oxygen out of the room.
That is a problem. You're right.
I'm not a Trump fan, but he is a media genius. He is a savant at being able to use the spotlight to his own ambitions, to use divisiveness as a propulsive element in his own ambitions. And
he took the best mugshot anybody knew was possible.
Yeah.
And he, but like in a negative media firestorm, he's like this bacteria that like lines the rim of a volcano with the bottom of the ocean that like would kill anybody else, but he thrives there. So with the indictments happening, all the attention's going to go to him. He's going to be able to turn that to his campaign. I think that prior to that, maybe the Republicans could have knocked him out. I think now, though, I think he's got to, unless he's literally in prison or he's physically incapacitated, I think he's got a lock on this, and it's a question of who the VP candidate's going to be.
I agree with you, and I think again, it's if you think of the things that can make Trump win, one is not talking too much, not being around, and the other thing is conspiracy. People think that they're trying to get rid of him, so they're going to stand for him, not really for his ideas, But I want to ask you guys a question. I don't know if you know that. I mean, you studied law. I don't know if you know the answer to this one, Andrew, as well. Did Trump or did they need to get a mugshot? Because I thought that if you a public figure and people know who you are, you don't have to get a mugshot, and that's why he never got it in New York or the others. And this was just extreme. Is that correct? My information is correct. That if you are like very,
I think you're right, but I don't want to go on record to say I think you're right.
I think it's at the discretion of the sheriff, and in the case of Georgia, the sheriff elected to treat him like any other indicted criminal or indicted person. So I think it could have gone either way. It makes total logical sense for somebody to go, look, everybody knows who Trump is. There's no reason to do this. At the same time, I can understand a sheriff going, look, I'm not giving a special treatment to anybody. I'm just going to treat everybody the exact same. And cynically, you could say it's because they wanted to dick him around and frog march him in. And so it could have gone either direction.
Yeah. And remember Pablo Escobar's mugshot was the most famous one right now, right? Remember that? So So I think we at 5 o'clock we're good. Well, guys, unless you want to talk about anything else before we go, no, good, Andrew.
No, I'm good. Oh, I did want to bring this up. Did you see that the DOJ is prosecuting SpaceX because they advertised that they could only hire U.S. citizens for specific? That does strike me as absolute federal pressure bullshit right there. Like, you can go on the DOJ's website and they've got the same language. If you can't do, like, I don't know what Elon Musk did to piss off the DOJ, but I think that is actually targeted prosecutorial bullshit where they're going after him. And I see no other reason for it.
I'm really happy you brought this up. I just wrote an email to somebody about this. So they've had it in from Musk. First of all, because Tesla's not unionized, this is how it starts. And then, of course, Musk has been tweeting incendiary stuff about politics, and he's become an enemy of the left. And what's interesting is that Bill Barr was considered to be this politicized attorney general, Trump's henchman. But in retrospect, we've learned that Bill Barr knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was not a plant. He knew it during the election and kept it quiet. Bill Barr also knew about this Ukrainian guy who was claiming that he got a $5,000 bribe and filled out the FBI form. I believe Bill Barr knew about that and kept it quiet. And behind closed doors, when Trump was putting forth all his election nonsense, Bill Barr gave him no quarter. Bill Barr, completely, not even for a second helped the. So it turns out that when no one was looking, Bill Barr showed a lot of integrity on matters that really mattered. And as opposed to Biden's DOJ and this sainted, Merrick Garland, who was supposed to be this wonderful Supreme Court justice, in between this total disgrace of the information that's come out from this, based on the this guy Weiss and the Hunter Biden investigation, and then this example here where they're going after Musk for citizens only in a sensitive position for something that they do themselves. It really looks like they are quite politicized and actually targeting things that fit their agenda. And it's possible that's not the case, because it's hard to believe they would do that. It's just hard to believe they would do that. But as more evidence piles up, it becomes harder to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. And I would say related to that, so, I don't usually, we have the other podcast, the Live from the Table, that we do. I had an episode this week with Philip Bump. You know who Philip Bump is? The Washington Post reporter.
Oh, yeah. The media guy, yeah.
And, I had him on to dispute some of the Hunter Biden stuff. And this guy had a total meltdown. I mean, I invite everybody to watch it. I invite you to watch it, Andrew. You can find. I mean, I'd be curious. Actually, you have my email address. I'd be curious if you have the time to listen to it. I know everybody's busy.
I'll check it out.
Write me what you think.
Philip Bump's kind of the supreme anti-Fox guy, as I recall, right? Like, he's sort of the right-wing media watch dude at the Washington Post.
He's not a media guy. He's data stuff, but he is a supreme anti-Fox guy. He's a you can Google him, but he was nasty to me. He threatened to walk off. He was, and I mean, I was, very, very, I was myself. I was like a little bit of a bulldog, but I was, as always, I am with people who disagree. I was respectful. I never made any personal, nothing. And the guy just freaked out. And I was playing Devin Archer testimony. I'm saying, well, why does he say the narrative was fed to him? Why does he say the narrative was spun to him? Why does he say he called his dad? Why is it like and he says, well, he's just saying those things to please Tucker Carlson. I'm like, nobody being interviewed just makes stuff up to please Tucker Carlson. Is that really your argument? Like this, because he finally had to admit that, well, Devin Archer was saying all this stuff despite the columns that he had written to the contrary. And he came up with this reason that he's saying all this stuff, all this, not incriminating, but all this stuff which made it clear that he was communicating that there was much more to this story than meets the eye, but he's just not going to share it. And he said, well, he's saying that stuff to please Tucker Carlson, which I thought, which is ridiculous. So I invite everybody to listen.
Do you have a clip that we can play right now?
I don't have a clip you can play right now. I could have gone, but just just look it up. Live
I'll
from the
leave a
table.
link in the description of this podcast so people can go straight. Just click the link
No,
and you're gonna go. It's live
I'll
from the table.
I'll send you the link.
So far. So what happened? He just walked out.
Yeah, he walked out and then he made some claims, and then I checked them out after he left, and those turned out not to be true. And I cut them into the podcast, but I also wrote him an email saying, listen, I looked up what you told me. And I said, I read these into the podcast. They're contradictory to what you told me. If you want to dispute it or you want me to change it, whatever it is, please let me know. But he's ghosted me ever since. He won't even answer me. Like even to say, yeah, like just, and then of course, and then this week he's going after Professor Jonathan Turley, this law school professor from Washington University, whatever it is, who's associated with pouring cold water on a lot of anti-Trump ideas, and he's just going after the guy, and seems to me unfairly to some extent. All of which is to say, you'd think a guy who makes his living going after people, makes his living catching people in weak arguments, would take it in stride. He wouldn't take it personally that somebody invited him on to talk about a subject he's written about and challenged him. And all I did was challenge him, and he took it very personally. And I challenged him fucking respectfully. And by the way, the reason I had him on, which I take pride in myself this way, is I asked, I don't want to say his name, I don't want to get in trouble. I asked a prominent person. I said, I really feel like I have a different idea on this Hunter Biden stuff. Who is the reporter in the country who you think is the smartest proponent of the kind of the pro Joe Biden position on Hunter Biden? And he told me Philip Bump. So being a guy of good faith, I said, well, let's get Philip Bump on the show. Rather than bring on some guy that I can make mincemeat out of or some second-rate guy, I wanted to challenge myself to debate the guy. So I brought on the guy, and I told him that, which is flattering to him in a way. And you know what? If you couldn't handle it, you couldn't handle it. What do you want from me? Well, anyway.
I will definitely check this out. I feel like I usually about 80% of the time agree with you. I think I'm like 80-20. So
yeah.
Granted, we're not like antithetical to one another. We've argued about some shit in the past. I never felt personally attacked by you. Like in my experience, you go after ideas rather than people. And we're very different, right? Like, it's
by
one
the
thing
way,
to say you're wrong. It's another thing to say you're a shitbag.
Just so you know, I had him dead to rights on some stuff that he had written, and I chose never to bring those things up, specifically because I didn't want to kind of humiliate him by exposing things that he had written which didn't hold up, which were false. So I did the interview never even alluding to the things that he had written, even though I was aware that he had written some things that didn't hold up. So I was really, in a certain way, trying not to embarrass him. So I'll just fast forward way to the end. We kept saying, you have no evidence, you have no evidence. I said, well, okay, you're going to go. He's already walking out the door. I'm like, well, we have this text message here from Joe Biden to his, I'm sorry. We have this text message here from Hunter Biden to his 25-year-old daughter, where he says, Lisa, I don't make you pay half your income to me the way I do to Pop, or whatever the exact words are. You're aware of that text message, right? And I said, yeah,
I've not heard that one.
There's a text message where he says to a daughter, Naomi, I think is her name, and she's 25, essentially says, almost verbatim, I have to pay half my income to Pop, to Joe. So I'm like, well, what do you think that means? He goes, I don't know. I said, well, what do you think it could mean? I don't know. Well, it is evidence, isn't it? All right, I have to go. Meaning, like, I said, well, shouldn't the press, has anybody asked her what it meant? Because I accused him of saying, I said, it's like a whole ocean of sharks has simultaneously lost its ability to smell blood in the water. If there was a text message from Donald Trump Jr. to his daughter saying, I got to give half my money to whatever it is, they'd be all over that. Because it's a text message that was never supposed to see the light of day. It's a private communication. Obviously, we all can put ourselves in a situation. Like if you're a 25-year-old woman, you kind of would be aware if your father was giving half his money your whole life to your grandfather. Like you don't just drop that on somebody. It has to have some context. So Now, maybe he's exaggerating it. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe who knows what the explanation is. But you'd think, this would be knowledge to everybody in America because it's so incriminating. And you'd think that a guy like Filippo would say, well, let's get to the bottom of this text message. No. What do you think about it? I don't know. That's the answer of the nation's leading. I don't know. Oh, no.
I gotta tell you, I've been doing this show with Noam for a long time. And I feel like he pissed off, quite a few people. But I tell you what, this is what I think most of the people get pissed off. I would say 10% Noam will yell or talk a lot over them or whatever. But 90% I feel they never been challenged before.
Yeah.
Like they always comfortable. And when they go to other TV, and that's why I take pride as much as he annoys me sometimes, especially that I have to deal with the guest afterwards. But this is what makes this show is you ask questions that they just don't ever get answered, and he doesn't let them get away with.
I'm going to give you the best example. I mean, I don't know if people always talk about of something I remember. David Frum, right? The great David Frum, the neocon. Yeah, and he is. Let me say, he's quite an intellect. I mean, I've read some of his books. This guy is no joke. But on Trump, I thought he was out to lunch. Even during the election, even before Trump was accused of being a crook or a Russia guy, he was, I thought, missing the boat on Trump. But anyway, this is about a year into the Mueller probe. And I said to him, look, it's obvious to me that Mueller didn't find anything. Because if Mueller had found... we're all waiting for it. I said, if Mueller had found that Trump was somehow compromised by Vladimir Putin, he would have to release that information immediately, not soon, not tomorrow, immediately, because Trump is the president of the United States. And you can't sit back and let a compromised president of the United States make decisions while you're taking your sweet time, investigating. You would have to release that evidence immediately and preliminarily because it's an urgent matter, and you would have to release it to Congress so they could impeach him if you have the evidence. So this to me seemed like a obvious, irrefutable argument. And and he says, no, Mueller would do it by the book. And I'm like, you think Mueller's going to take as long as it takes to write this report when he knows that Trump's pulling out of NATO, not because he thinks it's a policy, but because Putin told him to? You really think Mueller would sit back and let that happen? And Frum says, yes, Mueller would do it, which is ridiculous, right? It's absurd on his face, but he had never been challenged. And he's another guy who never wrote me back again.
Well, the list is long. The list is long.
And I respect him. But these guys, can I say one more thing? I wrote, for some reason, challenging people outside their bubble has become something of violating a social norm. That's not the way it used to be, but that's the way it's become now. So if I come hard at Philip Bump, it feels to everybody now like, how dare you? Like, why are you so rude? Like, where in my opinion, wait a second, this is a political podcast, and we're like, of course we're supposed to argue about that.
That's also how you get rid of dumb opinions. And I've not watched the thing yet, so I'm not saying that about Philip. I'm just saying in general, I've been wrong about a bunch of stuff in the past. Right now,
I'm sorry. How does that feel?
I assume I'm wrong about 25% of the stuff I currently think. I just don't know what part. So I need people to challenge me. And probably I'm not going to wholesale drop all my beliefs, but maybe I'll navigate a little bit, and I'll tuck this bit in, and I'll move over a little bit. And at the very least, when you're challenged, that's when you become the smarter version of whatever you are. And when you exist in an echo chambers breed contempt, and they breed stupidity. They're not good for intellectual discourse. We sharpen each other. That's how it works.
I think it's fun. Now, you know what? I will say this in the defense of
but you're also trained an attorney, and this is one of the things I really like about attorneys. Now, is that in my experience, attorneys are very, very good, either through natural bearing or through professional training, at separating the argument from the person. So attorneys can argue passionately and then go get a beer because it was never a personal thing, right? So I think you've already got a leg up on other people by virtue of your training.
Well, that's an interesting point. That is true. I learned that from my father, not law school. But I would say that I just, to be fair to those guys, I'm just the owner of the Comedy Cellar. So if somebody routs me publicly in an argument, it's meaningless, right? But if David Frum or Philip Bump are made to look like their arguments are built on quicksand by the owner of the Comedy Cellar, this touches on their careers. It touches on, this cuts them very deeply. So I understand, to be fair, somewhat of why that would bother them. However, take it, because, that's the way it goes. Don't hold it against me. And you'll listen to it. I did not say anything rude to him, even slightly rude to him.
But that's
and he was rude to me. He was rude to me over and over, but I let him go past me. What?
Some guests I see a lot. I see that look, the first look in their face when there's certain questions. I think some guests used to either go to like MSNBC when they agree on everything, or go to Fox, whatever, if they disagree, and they know exactly what they're gonna talk about, and turns into like just back and forth. But nobody really challenged them. And once you challenge them, they're like, what? I'm not used to that.
I can see this look in people's eyes where, and like, I don't really tend to lock horns very much. Like on my show, The Political Orphanage, I'm interested in exploring ideas. So I'm not particularly combative, but like just in a pub or something like that, there comes this moment where the person gets really irritated with me and then just spends the rest of their time trying to figure out how maybe I'm sexist or racist. Even though that wasn't a predominant thing in the first half of the conversation, I can now sense when it happens, and it's like, we're done. Because now you're no longer interested in dealing with the ideas. You're just trying to figure out a way to disqualify me from the conversation because you don't want to deal with me. And I don't want to deal with this. I'm not doing that to you. I'm not trying to demonize you. So let's just move on.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that. All right.
Last thing, quickly before we go, I just want to share something because I'm proud of a friend of mine. He just posted it again. It's an old one, but he posted it again, and I wanna share it because he's proud of it very much, and I wanna be proud of it as well. So this is in an Egyptian newspaper. This is Tawil, who's been a chef at the Olive Tree. This is him with Dave Chappelle.
Oh, wow, look at that.
And he's been a chef at the Olive Tree for how long, Noam?
40 years.
40 years. And he's a great guy, and he's so proud. And this is an article about him in an Egyptian newspaper about working in Manhattan and doing all this. And he's a great man. So I just wanted to share.
Good for him.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, you want to share anything before we go? When you come, you're coming to New York soon, right?
I'm coming to New York soon. I'm actually leaving Edinburgh early because I'm working on a television pilot, and so I'm flying to New York. I was going to be here mid-month, but I'm flying to New York September 7th. I'll be there for a week. I would love to hang out with y'all in person.
That'd be great. When are you coming? When are you coming? Say it again.
I fly on the 7th, and I'll be there for a week of September. So here in about 2 weeks.
All right. I'm gonna, yeah, absolutely. We'll roll out the red carpet for you. I'm gonna cut the link into you. This is the generic link, not on Spotify I guess you can end the podcast hot if you want, but this is.
Yeah. Do you want to promote your show before we go?
Promote what?
Your show, Andrew's show.
Oh, Andrew's show. Yes,
I will. Hey, gang, I host the Political Orphanage, so-called, because I am not on red team or blue team, and I'm very exhausted by that ongoing tug of war. So if you find yourself in the same camp and you're interested in how people think and how to fix things, and you want to hear a comedian describe all of that, go check out the Political Orphanage. It might be where you belong.
There you go. And you can email us if you're interested at LiveFromAmeriaComedyStyle.com. Thank you very much.